Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Greg, and we're going to be talking about the 5 steps to entrepreneurial success. I'm really excited about this, Greg, because you have run a whole bunch of businesses, a whole bunch of successful businesses. Well, they can be failures because we learn from that, just our failures just as much as our successes. But you've run a whole bunch of businesses, and you're going to share the 5 steps of success with us today. Before we get into it, can you tell us where people can find you?
Absolutely. So, well, thanks for having me here, Tim.
You're welcome.
Easiest way to reach me is probably on Twitter. I'm at Gregarious on Twitter. If you want to check out my current startup, though, it's called Zealous, zealous.app. You see that URL right there. And feel free to, hit me up with a DM. My DMs are open. So I look forward to chatting with you over there.
Fantastic. And I am actually going to ask you about your new startup, but I'm going to do it at the end.
No problem.
So people can get the value out of this and then say, I don't want the pitch. but there again, they may say you're such a lovely, insightful, intelligent person. I'm sure when we get to the end, they're going to go, I'm up for this pitch.
We'll do our best.
We came up with 5 steps when we spoke in. For people that don't know, I always have a preparation call. So I met with Greg and we talked about what is it that we're going to chat about, and we came up with these 5 steps. Why don't you, before we get into it, why don't you just give us a very, very quick overview of your background?
Yeah.
Because this isn't your, to use an American phrase, this isn't your first rodeo, is it?
No. By the way, what would be the equivalent where you are?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we don't do rodeos or anything like that. It's actually we're in the UK. We're not big on entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. I was at a conference in Denver back in 2019, and
where I live, by the way.
Oh, right. Okay. I love Denver. I love Denver. It's a beautiful place. And this person was introduced as having done 3 startups here in the, and everyone stood up and applauded. That wouldn't happen here. It was quite strange.
Yeah. It's so funny because all the people I know in the UK are entrepreneurs. So
yeah, I know we have loads and we don't support them. And
yeah. Interesting. Well, yeah. So just for background, I guess, on who I am, my parents immigrated here in the 70s. And so I'm a child of, a first generation. And I think that it just instills in you sort of a sense of entrepreneurship kind of by default. I've always been an entrepreneur in one way or another. I think my first endeavor charging people for something was in the 3rd grade. My first corporation was when I was 16, in high school still. And I've done a number of different startups. I eventually wandered into, I actually was pre-med, got into med school and decided that would be a horrible life for me. And so became an entrepreneur instead, much to the chagrin of my parents, who both ran their own businesses and couldn't understand why I would want to be an entrepreneur. But I became a tech entrepreneur at that point. My background was actually in design. I was a designer, in college, worked throughout, and then became a developer. So I've done both for 20 something years now. But honestly, I really just saw entrepreneurship as a path to realizing things that I wanted to see in the world. And so I could see problems that I wanted to fix. I could see tools that I wanted to use. And so I pursued this pathway because I'm a builder and problem solver kind of at heart. Far less motivated by the money than, I think others are, I guess, in some respects. Obviously I love capitalism and the idea of but I love the challenge of more creating value and having it be valuable to someone than purely sort of the windfalls that others may be optimized around. Right. But yeah, my background is in all covers all bases. I have design background, developer background, but largely run product, as well over several years, and then been involved in sales and any number of other aspects throughout time.
So it's interesting that you use that as your introduction, because the first one that you said, and I love this. I don't like one of the words you've used, but I know what you're trying to say.
Mhm.
Your first one is provide value, don't ask for it. I don't like the word value because it means different things to different people, but I know what you mean by it.
Yeah.
So provide value, but don't ask for it. Talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think it's the word value is intentionally vague, right? Because I think most transactions tend to be value exchanges, right? And in the beginning, earliest parts of your journey as an entrepreneur, really, you are asking a lot of someone else, right? And so, if you are demanding a lot back from them without providing that value first, that baseline, it creates a very difficult environment for people to be willing to help you, willing to provide you feedback, and willing to sort of iterate with you, right? Uh, True tech startups in particular, or startups in general, I guess, are designed for like rapid iteration and scale, right? And so that means that oftentimes your customers have to put up with a tremendous amount of crappy stuff first, right? Before you get to the part where it may be there. Other businesses don't.
Crappy stuff, is that the equivalent of a minimum viable product?
Yeah, well, not even a minimal viable product. Like, think about it. Like, before you get to an MVP, there's an experiment, and then there's likely a long laundry list of failed experiments, right? And someone may be like with you through all of those things, right? Like, before you even get to the part that you could call it an MVP, right? So I think like the idea is really like be of service, be valuable, offer value before you sort of try to exact it back out from like making it transactional, right? Like really, honestly, the early days, you're almost more of a nonprofit. You're just hoping to help, right?
Yeah.
And if you can find a way to help that is repeatable and highly valuable in a sort of financial way, then maybe you have a business opportunity there.
And I totally agree. I think it's when we set up this company, the idea was always. Someone said to me, I was actually on a podcast yesterday, and they said, what's your company about? I said, actually, it's not. Even though we're a training, coaching, and consulting company, actually, this is about changing people for the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the kick that I get out is, and I said this, I sit in, well, I used to sit in rooms, but I'll be on Zoom or something like that, and there's people with their arms folded saying, you can't teach me anything. I know everything there is to be about sales or whatever. And then, what used to happen before COVID was these people used to come up and hug me and say, you've changed my life. And that is the best feeling in the world,
Yeah.
is when that happens. It's just awesome.
That's right.
And that comes about not by trying to sell something to somebody, but by what you say is providing value and don't ask for it.
The most famous like moment of that, I guess, is like, in that movie, The Social Network, where sort of, he's talking to like the Napster guy, and he's like, no, don't charge. They were arguing about, should we start charging? Should we start bringing advertising in, et cetera? And that was that opportunity. It's like, no, really, where like Zuckerberg was like, we should create more value, keep building value before we try to exact sort of that cost, right? And I think it's in the same vein of like a Gary V, like those are the jabs before the right hook, right? Like you're going to offer and offer and offer before you ask, right? Mm-hmm.
So number 2, build goodwill and a network. It will unlock doors.
Yeah. So this is a mistake I see too many entrepreneurs make, right? And it's related to the first one, which is that they're highly transactional. And so, if you get into this mindset of like, what are you going to do for me? Right. What ends up happening is, when you don't have something to offer, then suddenly all these transactions sort of die or disappear or dissipate away. Right. And I think, the best time to be building your network was like 10 years ago, right? Like, it's the thing with the trees, right? And the second best time is right now, right? Like, you cannot manifest relationships at will just because you need them, right? That's called sales, right? That's not relationships, right? But if you do need a network of people that you can go to, that you can trust for, their advice, their feedback, their input, right? Their connections, whatever it may be, that takes a long time and investment that you need to be constantly making, right? And that's even true with your early customers and early adopters, right? Like where if they know you're trying, right? Then you end up in a better spot. I'll give you a great example, right? Just 2 weeks ago, we had one of our customers bought like our first NFT. It's a large purchase, right? Like $1,700, right? Like a lifetime access to our product. And she sent me an email and she was giving me some and I just said like, hey, look, it feels like you're not getting what you were hoping for yet, right? Like if you're unhappy, I will let you use the product and I'll return your money to you, right? And you know what she wrote back and said, no, I don't want that at all. She's like, I know you all are working hard, right? Like, she's like, I'm just trying to understand like how some of these pieces go together, et cetera, right? Like, so, but that's like the goodwill you build. And if we didn't have that relationship, like other kinds of folks might have just been like, yeah, give me my money back. Like this isn't what I thought it was, right? Versus like people like, no, I'm here with you for the journey, right? And so I think like that is the difference, is like how you relate. And those 2 points, these first two things go really tightly together, right? Is that if I'm here from a point of view of help and service and value creation for you, you're going to be like, look, I get you're going to stumble. I get you're small, you're learning. We're all learning together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have the opportunity to get to a better place together, right? Yeah. You don't get that goodwill. You don't get the benefit of the doubt, though, if you haven't invested in sort of like building those relationships and making sure that people understand that you value them.
Yeah, I had a call this morning where somebody said to me, so if this happens and this happens and this happens, then they wouldn't buy your service. And I said, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we wouldn't sell them anything because they wouldn't.
They're not our target. Yeah,
they're not our target. Yeah. And it will just cause bad will and they'll hate us and they'll ask for the money back or something like that. So we wouldn't even. And the person was like, oh, right. Okay. So, and, and we do. And I said, look, we do that. We've been in many situations where we've just said, this isn't right for us. And have walked away. I've walked away from a contract with SAP because it wasn't right for us.
It happens, you have to be able to also say like, this relationship is not good for us, right? Like, equally important is weeding out the ones that are toxic, that are over involved or overcomplicated, because that actually complicates your ability to be good and deliver great value to all your other customers.
Yeah. And so we have a guy called Rob Durant who works for us. He also is a lecturer at a university, and he tells his students that the best time to build a network, because he actually told his students about network and they didn't know what he was talking about. And so he explained it and he said, the best time to build a network is now. And they said, why is that? I said, well, if you connect to anybody on LinkedIn and say, I'm Tim Hughes and I'm at Suffolk University and I'd love to connect with you, you'll accept it. The moment that you start a job and you say, I'm Tim Hughes and I work for and I work with no one will accept it.
That's right. So
you've got this opportunity now to build this massive network of people. And the moment that you switch from student to work,
right,
you switch.
What's your angle, right? Yeah.
So number 3 is find what you are good at and what you are bad at.
Yeah. This is very hard. So I was actually just describing this to someone today in a text message, but when you start early on, you have all the hats, regardless of how good you are at any of them. Right. And so delegation is just like a very important leadership skill for you to develop. And I we had a guy join our team recently, and I told him the other day, I apologize. I was like, okay, I'm just apologizing now. Like, I'm getting used. I've been running product here for a long time. I'm trying to hand the reins to someone else. And I said, I'm still getting used to being purely reactionary, right? Like, because every day when you're early is a fire. Well, and every day later is also a fire, but different kinds of fires, right? And every day it'll feel existential, et cetera, right? And so I think like what a lot of founders want to do is they want to hire people to do the jobs that they don't like doing. Yeah. But that's an important distinction versus a job that you're not good at, right? Founders should likely do all of the jobs as long as possible, because there's usually very important insight embedded in learning about sales and about support and about product and about engineering, etc., whatever it's going to be, all your divisions, departments, etc., right? But you shouldn't be a rate limiter to those functions succeeding, right? So if it was a 2x2 grid, it would be like, I like it, I don't like it, versus like, I'm good at it versus I'm bad at it, right? There's a sweet spot for you personally, but you personally is not usually the best optimization in a startup, right? Usually it's the company first, right? So like, what's best for the company? It's like, well, we could spend a lot of money to get a person who's good at this, or we could use what I do and make do. Guess what? That's what 95% of us are going to do.
Yeah.
But when you get to the ability to like actually add people to your team, I would just caution, don't just try to get rid of the things you don't like doing.
Yeah.
Get rid of the things you're not good at, right? Like a lot of software people, they end up being very good at selling, engineers, but they don't like doing it, right? Now, is that the best use of their time? That's like the better question to be asking, right? Like, and those decisions change over time as your organization gets larger, right? You're always working to replace yourself and displace functions that you do to free up time for you to operate at more and more strategic levels.
Yeah, and I think I always use to test what's the best use of my time. As in, and it may be that I'm doing things that I don't like. But it's about making sure that I'm progressing the business.
Yeah.
Number 4 is learn how to balance that out with everything else.
Yeah. So, I think like one of the things that I've seen where most people crumble over time is just like not actually understanding that a startup, your new business is quicksand, right? So you will never run out of things to do. You will never run out of things to think about. You will never run out of things to fret over, right? You will always be worried for your life, right? At any moment, any day, right? And anytime you think something's going well, something else will come up to make you to square you back to place, right? So I think like what my main goal here is more for people to understand that you have to have a life outside. I'm not suggesting it should be every weekend off or 6 weeks off in the summer or anything like that, right? Like, but I think if you don't recharge those batteries, you run the risk of not being able to succeed just as well. And most people just don't grok that, right? Like they think they have this infinite well of energy. And I get that that's what you want to believe to be true, but it's not true, right? When the foolish days when I was young, I would work 20 hours a day, straight, but never really like took the time to look at, was the work I was doing in those last 4 or 5 hours the same as the work I was doing in the earlier part? And if I had, I might've been like able to recharge and come back fresher, faster, and better the next day, right? I still work 7 days a week. I still work, probably like at least, 10 hours. My day starts at 5 a.m. my time. My first call is at 5 a.m. And, like I'm here at 10 a.m. my time now. I've already been working for 5 hours, right? And I won't finish until 6 p.m. tonight, right? So like I have 12-hour days, at least 5 days a week, right? So I'm not suggesting that like, that there's all this freedom that exists here. But what I am suggesting is that balance is important, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
And just here's the thing. The most important lesson here, though, is remember you choose these things, right? So you choose, like, it's okay to not have time for your friends, but I want you to remember that's a choice you're making, right? To barter away some of that time so this other time could be better, right? You barter away time with your family, you barter away time with your friends. You're making that choice, which means that you can choose for it to not be that case also, right? Yeah. Right? Like that's the reason. Like things aren't happening to you. You are choosing them. And so just choose wisely.
And number 5 is unsurprisingly focus on the customer, and they will guide you to the place you want to be. To the place you want fastest.
Yeah. Biggest mistake most founders make is that they think that the picture they have in their head is the picture that customers have in their head, right? And businesses win because markets adopt your solution, right? Now, you could be right. Your vision, if you were able to manifest it, right, like in the time, money, and a window of opportunity that existed, and you prove it to be true, great, right? If you're an amazing marketer, you might be able to convince people, right, like that your way of thinking is the right way, right? But most of the time, 95% of the time, right, if you actually listen to what your customer is saying they need, and I said listen, not, but more importantly is hear, right?
Yeah. Difference
Right.
between listening and hearing. Yeah.
Then you're going to end up in a better place, right? Now, the reason people get scared of this, right, is that for two reasons. One is that it violates the vision of like the business they wanted to be in, right? I was texting with a friend this morning. Her startup has pivoted into a whole different area than like what her career was in, et cetera. And I was like, hey, how do you feel about it? Are you okay with it? Because I know you like left your thing to go do this thing, et cetera. And she's like, yeah, it feels like the right place to be. And that's the right attitude, right? Like, it's like, if you're servicing a customer and trying to create an opportunity in a market, then you have to find them, right? And what they're telling you may just not resonate with the vision you originally had. But I guarantee you, Tim, you probably know a million entrepreneurs as well. Ask any of them what they started out to do and what they're doing at the end. And it is never, ever the same thing, right? It changes, it evolves, and it moves constantly, right? The second reason, though, and this is a reasonable one, but I just want to make sure I point it out, which is that a lot of times folks will think that, well, that's just this one person who needs this, right? But the way to win is to focus on those niche audiences and stack them to get to bigger and bigger opportunity. So yes, you may be saying like, oh, there's this idea of a local maximum, right? Like, am I only going to maximally reach like maybe 100 or 1,000 customers? I was like, you should be so lucky to have 100 or 1,000 customers. Then let's talk.
So we're at 20 minutes. We're at 22 minutes. So first and foremost, Greg, remind everybody where they can find you.
Absolutely. I am at Gregarious on Twitter. Best way, easiest way, just shoot me a DM over there. If you want to check out Zealous, it's zealous.app.
So just give us because I know you can do this.
Yeah.
I'm not just picking this. Give us the elevator pitch on zealous.app.
Yeah, absolutely. So very easy. Zealous helps anyone who makes content, much like you, like live or recorded content. We give you superpowers and help you repurpose that content back out for any social platform by using AI and your audience data to basically figure out the best moments and turn it into videos, audio clips, et cetera, everything you would need to market that, repurpose that content so you get more lift and reach.
Because you had a vision, didn't you? The fact that you were in a job and you were basically taking these subscriptions, £5 here, £10, sorry, $5 here, $10 here,
yep.
$5 here, $10 here. And then what you decided is, what happens if I took all of that and made one out?
Yeah, the dollars was a big part, but the even bigger part to me was like, wait, I'm not even doing the things with those tools that I thought I should be doing, right? I was paying for this full stack of tools with the idea of like, I have a live podcast and I wanted to then like market it, but I never had the time to market it because I was too busy being a founder. Right. Yeah. And so that's the real reality, is that most of us, all of us, I imagine, would easily say we don't have enough time and maybe not even enough money to do the right marketing that we want to do for the things that we're saying. That's what Zealous is here for.
Brilliant. Greg, thank you so much for coming on and sharing us your insight today. It's been awesome. And I've been really looking forward to this. I've been on vacation for a week. So you're my first thing back, and I was being really ready to, I went downstairs, made a cup of tea, and I thought, this is going to be good. And thank you so much for meeting my expectation. And Andrew gave us a comment as well.
Thank you. Great to see you, Andrew. Well, thank you. I know it's always fun, and I'm glad you got a break in there, Tim.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.